And we are live. Actually, we're not live right now, but we are recording for our very first episode of Triple Sigma with Alex Feinberg. Joining me today is my good friend Penn Murfee. I've known Penn for several years. He's a Major League Baseball player. He went to Vanderbilt like I did. You can see background, my jersey, proof that I played. Used to be somebody, maybe I'm somebody different now. Had to reinvent myself several times along the way. But the theme of the Triple Sigma podcast is to bring on Triple Sigma performers. If you're unfamiliar with what that means, Triple Sigma is a term used in finance to denote the rarity of an event. So Triple Sigma meaning 3 standard deviations above the mean. 1 in roughly 700 people can perform at the level of the guests that we'll be bringing on. Every single one that you will hear from is going to have done something incredibly unique in his or her life, has had a very unique journey, very unique mindset that can transfer not just to their specific domain, but to any domain, because we are masteries of mindset here. So Penn, this is also your P card, your very first podcast that you've done. Welcome.
First time. Thank you, Alex. And yeah, looking forward to diving into the weeds a little bit.
Well, why don't you tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself? You know, they know you're a Major League Baseball player, but they don't know how you got to be where you are, the different hurdles you had to jump through, the self-doubt that you experienced from your journey in Nashville to back to Nashville right now in the off season, but in a very different position from where you were about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I look now, I'll go from now and work backwards. But I never really saw myself playing baseball at 30 years old, especially when I was 6. You know, I enjoyed baseball growing up, and I think that I failed to realize that you could really, chase that kind of dream. And to see it now, it's a little hard for me to believe at times. But I'm Penn Murfee. I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I have one brother. I have a great family. I love them very much, and they're instrumental in getting me to this point. I'm actually back at my parents' house right now, so I've been really enjoying spending some time with them. But general journey, I went to high school in Nashville. I think that helps being close in proximity to Vanderbilt University. I don't know if I would have been recruited to Vanderbilt had I not been so close by. I had some other offers coming out of high school for other collegiate programs, but getting a bid at Vanderbilt was, I was, what do they call it, kicking my coverage a little bit there, I think. And at that time, I was still a infielder. I'd say more utility than anything. I wasn't a pitcher like I am now. And I was really just happy to have a spot on the team and help contribute when I could, but mainly, help pay for my education. I thought that, using my brain was going to be more my ticket. So when all the scouts would come by for the scouting meetings and stuff like that, I never really expected anything. And baseball was always kind of just that, not a crutch, but it's an extra handhold for me to utilize. I was gifted. I was a good ball player, but I never really saw myself progressing past college.
Now, why is that? Because, most people, particularly who go through the amateur baseball circuit that has existed over the last 15 years, like, you don't just get random offers to play at top 25 universities. You have to go, for the most part, especially if you're not a top recruit, you have to grind it out and get seen by coaches and go out of your way to show them that you're head and shoulders above other people that they might be able to give a roster spot to. So clearly you did something in high school that warranted an opportunity that most people don't have. You can't just walk on to a SEC school, a top 25 school, without any talent.
Again, getting back to the family being instrumental in why I'm here today, my father was very aware at how competitive that landscape was, not just in baseball, but, business, you name it. Like, he understands that if you want to be average, okay, go do average things. But if you want to get a seat at the table where few sit at, then you're going to have to do things that average won't do. And he was the one who pushed me into travel baseball coming up. And when I was in high school, he said, "Hey, Penn, you're skinny. You need to get in the weight room." So I'd work out 4 mornings a week before I went to high school and dragged a buddy along with me. So doing extra things like that, swimming in the winter, trying to get my shoulder stronger. I didn't really have that foresight in terms of working out and trying to become stronger, better. And as far as getting exposed, like I said, I was a pretty good baseball player, but I think being close, I played at Montgomery Bell Academy, which is not even 15 minutes from Vanderbilt. So being close by to Coach Corbin and being in the general Southeast, some of these big tournaments that all the college coaches would go to in East Cobb, Georgia, Nashville held a couple of them, Cincinnati, I was kind of right in the center of the hotbed for recruiting out of the Southeast outside of, Florida. But yeah, I made it very known to college coaches that, I'd go over and watch Vanderbilt's practice. I'd be the only person sitting in the stands after my high school practice was over. I'd go over there and watch and try and stay hidden unsuccessfully, but I did try and go the extra mile in a lot of ways. I think Corbs and some other coaches picked up on that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I got from actually talking to Troy Tulowitzki, a former Major League All-Star who became a college coach and is strongly influenced by Penn and our college coach, Coach Corbin. The way that he looks at high school players to determine how they're going to be when they become college players or even professional players is how they prepare before the game, because it's so difficult to project somebody's physical capabilities and how those physical tools are going to map to the next level. You try to, but it's not always easy. But one thing that does map a lot better is a kid's desire and approach, because if you want to get better and you want to be a contributing member of the next level, you're going to be much more likely to figure out a way to do it than the kid who's simply relying on talent. And that transcends sports. And one reason why those who have been successful in sports are commonly successful in other domains in their life too, because they know that if you do want to be successful, you do have to go the extra mile. You have to do things that your competition isn't willing to do, as Penn's dad taught him at a young age. But, maybe you can explain for our listening audience the journey that you took from actually setting foot on Vanderbilt's campus and being, maybe one of the last few guys recruited to the team to ultimately becoming drafted by a major league team, albeit in a round that almost nobody makes it to the major leagues
not
from.
around anymore.
Yeah, it's so late it doesn't even exist anymore. Same with the round I got drafted in, but Penn was drafted a few rounds ahead of me. And you still made it to the major league. So how did that happen when you put in extra work without even realizing that you had an opportunity to get where you've gotten to?
Yeah, I think three things: ownership, luck, and persistence is how I'd boil it down. So ownership, I wish I had taken ownership of it sooner. And by that, I mean, made the decision for myself, hey, win, lose, or fail, I'm going to really go after this because I really want to do it. And I think that for whatever reason, I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. My dad did a really good job of explaining to me, hey, you got a good brain on you, making the big leagues. Let's look at the odds here. Odds are slim. I think he was just trying to provide me with a really solid plan B. But in doing so, having that plan B, it kind of got overweighted, and it seemed to be a little bit more like plan A. Hey, use baseball, go to school, but let's be real here. You're going to be a productive member of society. And even if you do make the big leagues, look at the average tenure of a big league baseball player. It's a very slim window. And then of the people who play for a few years, look at the ones who get contracts. So he was very wise in that. However, I do think that it got a little overly weighted. So while I was at Vanderbilt, I was a little 1 foot in, 1 foot out, more leaning towards the side of I'm just using baseball to get an education and go to work. So I wish I had taken that dream by the and just gone for it and said, I'll be fine in school, but I'm really focusing on baseball. I think that would have been totally fine. There's no wrong answers, right answers. It's just what do you want to pour your energy into? So that'd be number one. Number two, luck. I think that, when I finished up at Vanderbilt, I still had a year of eligibility. I'm thinking I'm going to try and get a job. Well, I did the same route that you kind of took. Silicon Valley was booming, albeit you were way ahead of the early adoption curve on my time frame. But Silicon Valley was very exciting. There was a whole lot of tech coming out of there, and I wanted to be in the belly of the beast. I wanted to be in the mix. And getting a graduate degree from out there and using baseball again to help provide for that was my thought process. Well, I had my second groin surgery before going there. So running the bases, playing infield, not super easy. And I kind of started pitching more. And at the fall in Santa Clara, I was still trying to play third base and provide value to the team on both sides of the ball. But my coach came to me and said, hey, I don't think you're going to get drafted as a position player. Let's just have you focus on being a pitcher. And if you get drafted, it looks good for the program. It's good for you if you want to take that opportunity. And, I think you're just going to help us win more off the mound. And
how many innings had you pitched at Vanderbilt prior to then?
Oh, I can't remember, Alex. I want to say it's either 7 or 11. It's one of the two.
You basically pitched the equivalent of one full game. Your first
pretty much
3 years?
Yeah. 4, yeah. I only pitched 1 year at Vanderbilt, and it was like I was coming in, for the 9th inning when we were down 12 or up 14. It was
right.
Like, hey, let's save
0 consequential outs.
Let's save the Stallions in the pen for the meaningful innings here, and
yeah,
I was fine with it. I didn't want to quit my 4th year. I just wanted to finish it out and finish what I started.
Okay.
So yeah, I had hardly pitched. I pitched my senior year in high school, but it's one thing to convert from playing in the field and going to pitching. You never stop throwing the baseball, but trying to go from pitching to hitting, that's a little more difficult.
Sure.
So I was, I could always spin a breaking ball. I was pretty confident at that, and I threw a whole lot at the wall and saw what stuck, and just learned by failure over and over and over again at Santa Clara. And like I said, got lucky, got drafted in the 33rd round. And my whole time in pro ball, this could get into a lengthy discussion, but my whole time in pro ball, it was me constantly banging my head against the wall, refusing to accept that they had $5,000 of signing bonus money invested into me. Why am I not getting the same chances as the guy who they invested $3 million into? And I was so dumb and naive. And that kind of brings us to point number 3, which is persistence. Like, I just won the war of attrition. I hung around long enough, and I performed well, but I just hung in there for long enough for me to be lucky and get a shot. But we can go into
and that's one of the things that I tell. That's one of the things that I tell so many people is you can't discount how much luck plays a role in success. And really, there's 2 things that go into luck. Are you pointed in generally the correct direction, and will you quit? And if you're pointed in generally the correct direction and you just figure out a way to stay in the game, you can increase your chances of succeeding from like 1 in 100 to like 40 in 100. And 40 in 100 for a long shot thing, like being a Major League Baseball player or founding a successful company, those are really good odds. And if you take that mindset, not just in sports, but you apply it to business, you apply it to anything where you're taking a moonshot, you just stick with it. Like by your 2nd or 3rd shot, you're probably going to be really successful. You're probably going to do something that you never thought that you could do, the way Penn never thought that he could become a major leaguer, if you just stick with it.
Yeah, and 2 things you pointed out, like failing, by your 2nd or 3rd shot, you said, you have a much better chance at being successful. And I think that was one thing I was super scared of, was the failure. In baseball, we always say, like, once you're off that train, you're off. You do really get one chance to kind of go through the whole progression. And if you're written off, if you're getting towards your 5th, 6th year in the minor leagues kind of deal, and you get released, and you go through that whole experience, it's very tough to get back in. So putting all your eggs in one basket and just launching for it is really the only option you have. But one thing my dad also told me was, I don't even know if it's true, I've never fact checked it, but Thomas Jefferson or someone said, I'm a big believer in luck. I find the harder I work, the more I have. And like you said, point your compass in the right direction and just busting your ass and hanging around long enough, like you're going to put yourself in more positions to, have luck
Did you ever think about quitting when you were in the minor leagues?
every single day.
Yeah.
Every
So what was
single
that
day.
like?
I would realistically wake up and ask myself, I was like, is there anything else that I'd rather do today? Like, I want to quit so bad for XYZ reason, this 14-hour bus trip, or not making any money, looking at all my other classmates who are, you know, putting in the time, you know, at the bottom of the totem pole, or getting their legwork done in other areas that's going to be productive for their career 5 years from now. Like, I'm out here throwing a baseball in Boise, Idaho, where didn't you play in Boise?
Yeah, it's a great place to play.
Yeah, Boise is a good place to play, but it's like, I'm out here, I'm 25 years old, everyone around me is 19 or 20, and I'm playing baseball for 600 grand or $600 every 2 weeks. Like, what realistically am I doing? And all this doubt of like, is this worth it? Am I making the right choice? Spend all this money on education. Like, when am I going to recoup that? What am I doing? And I'll just ask myself, is there something else today that I would rather do than go to the baseball field and just keep going, like just one more day? And every day I asked myself, I was like, no, I'm gonna stick with baseball.
That's very interesting. So the journey that you took, whether you realized it or not, is a very similar journey that people take when they're doing endurance events. Is if you're running a marathon, you don't think about running 26 miles, you think about running to the next tree and just not quitting until you get to the next tree, and you chunk it up. And what a lot of people don't realize until they've gone through very effort intensive events in their life is that they can push themselves a lot harder than they realize if they can chunk up their goals to what can I do today? What can I do today? What can I do today? Rather than where am I going to be 2 years from now based on the trajectory that I'm on. You were effectively going through an endurance race that required no long distance running.
Yeah, and one thing that you've really taught me, and being friends for these years, was like, you always have a choice in how you frame your situation, and you're so gifted at that, like taking yourself out of the present moment and looking at it from a very detached and unbiased view of like, okay, here's the X's and Y's, and or X's and O's on the football play sheet, and like, how do I really look at this? How do I feel about it? What's logical? Let's take a step back and like re-engage. And the whole time I was in the minor leagues, I'm thinking about all these what I don't have, right? Like, I'm not, learning how to model in Excel and being able to put together a solid resume for getting a job. Well, who gives a damn? Like, I'm playing baseball, I'm putting together a solid resume for my chances at making the big leagues. I'm having fun on 12-hour bus rides, playing karaoke on the bus with my friends, and like taking a step back and just reframing my mindset was big. Like, I have all these things that I could be enjoying, but comparison is the thief of joy type deal. I just never allowed myself to, again, take ownership and be like, this is worth it because I'm bought in. This is what I want to do. It's worth it to me. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense. And so how do you straddle the line between reframing your reality into a reality that benefits you and being in touch with actual objective reality, right? Because you could take this a step further and say, okay, well, you're making league minimum this year. Objectively, the smart thing to do is save money. So by the time you get out of baseball, even if you don't make a 25-man roster next year, you have I don't know, close to 7 figures saved up to go begin your life at 30 years old. That's rational. That's not incorrect. But then the optimistic version of it would be, well, my career can possibly bring me 8 figures. So let me invest every single dollar that I have into not just growing myself physically, but also growing my celebrity and figuring out how can I play the guitar on as many broadcasts as possible while people still care about me for being a baseball player. How can I get my image out there? How can I invest in Penn Murfee, the startup? Because if I put all my capital into Penn Murfee, the startup, that's the best investment that I have access to in today's market, and that can 10x within 2 or 3 years.
Well, that's more conversations that we'll have down the future. I think that's something that I put the cap on. I put the cap on my baseball career at 28. I said if I'm 28 years old and I haven't made the big leagues, it's again neither right nor wrong. That was just my choice. I was like, I'm gonna hang them up. I'm gonna get a move on because I have a certain, life I want to live, and there's certain choices that I want to make, and that was the parameters I set for myself. And I ended up debuting 5 days before my 28th birthday.
Good thing. Good thing. You didn't wait an extra week.
So, I think that like you asked me about straddling, and there's certain people who are delusional and it helps them, right? There's certain high performers who are just so out of touch with reality, who have no concept of failure and have no seemingly self-doubt. Like they'll just go try anything. They don't care what other people think of them. That's what it looks like, right? And I don't have that. I don't have that gene in me. I'm very analytical. I think about all this a lot, and I guess what I'm trying to say is for the past 3 years that I've been playing, baseball in the highest level, I've been trying to take it as day by day as possible and be present. I think that moving forward,
Yeah.
you asked me about the startup and like how can I, create a brand image. That isn't something that's been a huge focus of mine. Again, right or wrong, planning for the future, having that plan B. As I'm getting older, it's more of a thing I'm thinking about. But I don't know. That's something that
So how do you merge this analytical awareness with the reality of pitching in front of 30 or 40,000 people where, you leave one ball over the plate, that's game over, right?
Well, I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
And better to have fought and lost than not fought at all, right? The man in the arena, there's all these old adages that have been around for thousands of years, and it explains just that, right? But I gave up the go-ahead home run to the Houston Astros in the 18th inning of Game 3 of the division series in 2022. And that stunk. That stunk, but I also learned a lot from it. I can walk through that whole at-bat and that whole situation, and it was a tough place to pitch in, but, better to have fought and lost than not fought at all. And as far as...
So let's dive into that. For people who aren't familiar, this is your rookie season, right? You just got a taste of the big leagues. You're pitching in the playoffs your first year. You're on the road, right?
No, we were at home. We lost first 2
You're
games
at home.
in Houston. Yes.
Okay.
And we're back in Seattle, and it was our first time in the playoffs, in Seattle in 21 years or whatever it was. Like, it was a big deal for the city. And I was going out for my third inning of work. Like, it's been 4.5 hours since I left the dugout. I've been in the bullpen the whole time. It was me and Robbie Ray were the only 2 pitchers left out there, and we were stretched. It's 18th inning, so we're trying to get as many innings out of everybody as possible. So I'm going out for my third inning of work, and I don't think I'd done that all year. Well, the batter I was facing, I'd had a lot of success with, or against, throughout the course of the season. I had faced him a number of times and had not given up a hit. And I was trying to catch him off guard by throwing my fastball, which is not my best pitch. And he ended up cranking it, go-ahead home run. We lose the game the very next inning, and we lose the series. So looking back on it, I'm thankful for that. Because, if I get the opportunity again to pitch in the playoffs, maybe in a bigger game, like I've got a little bit more data points to think about.
That's an amazing reframe, because if I talk to 100 people, you're probably the only one who can spin what's objectively a negative experience, giving up a game-winning home run and effectively a season-ending home run, into I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that. And you're not faking it when you're saying that.
Well, I would have way rather struck his ass out and had a chance to keep on playing. But it's like it sucked. But like, what am I gonna do? Let it ruin the rest of my career as a baseball player? Like, think about that one thing? No. It's like. Right. Objectively, Alex Feinberg, let's take a step back. Let's scan it 360 and make a decision about it, because I do have that choice. And I
Yeah.
choose to look at it like, man, that really stunk. Like that really stung for a long time. But objectively, like what can I learn from it? And who knows, maybe if I'm pitching in the World Series one day, like, our former Commodore Walker Bueller closing out a World Series, it's like,
Yeah.
now I know what that feels like to have fought and lost because I was trying to trick, and play games and like rather than just staying present and competing and like not saying that I wasn't in that moment, but again, I just have more experience. And
That's uh that's very stoic. That's a very stoic response. I think Adam Townsend, one of my favorite follows on Twitter, was telling me to read Seneca earlier
mhm,
in the summer, and I think that Seneca was saying that I actually disagree with Seneca in this, but he's saying a boxer cannot truly be confident until he's knocked out. Because once he's knocked out, he understands,
you see the
he's
other side.
confident that he can withstand everything.
Hmm.
And I think you're proving me wrong in that, you've spun this to be something that's even better than the not having gotten knocked out. Because, I'll look objectively at fighters, and fighters will commonly be great and they get knocked out once and they lose that aura of invincibility, that
Hmm.
cockiness that they brought to the fight, and then they're not the same fighter. But you haven't lost that.
No.
Now you're going through other challenges that occurred the following season. So for those who are not familiar, you didn't pitch a major league game in 2024. So how has that been? How has the elbow injury weighed on your mindset? What have you had to reposition in your mind? What have you had to use the Alex Feinberg methods for in terms of making it a positive out of a negative as you rehabilitate yourself and get ready for spring training and the
Hmm.
2025 season?
Injuries are tough. I've talked with you a lot about your back and having to adjust certain routines that you've had or having to. Am I being too careful? Can I push it here? Am I being smart? Am I reaching for something that isn't worth it? Doing a lot of cost benefit analysis, right? But more than anything, you're trying to relearn your body. So again, for people listening, I had Tommy John surgery. It's a very common pitcher's baseball related injury, and it repairs one of your ligaments in your elbow. It takes about 12 to 14 months to fully be back game ready and compete at your former level. Um, but in regards to reframing the injury, I mean, I'm gonna keep it as honest as I can. I was paid to get healthy to this year, and I've told the Houston Astros organization this, as a whole, but I'm so bummed out I could not contribute to the team this year. I was really pushing the gas. I mean, poor Jeremiah Randall, my rehabilitation coordinator, wanted to throw me out of the room sometimes because I was pushing so hard to move the needle forward. And I really wanted to pitch and contribute and feel like I earned my paycheck this year. But I mean, I was very blessed. I was very fortunate. I was paid to rehab an elbow injury this year. And I think that, I could have wallowed, and believe me, I did at times. And, this is so monotonous. This stinks having to sit in the dugout and watch 9 innings of baseball every night and not be able to go out there and play. And you get all the adrenaline from watching on the sidelines, but you get no release. And it's a weird place to be in. But I was, again, coming back to being grateful that, um, I got injured at a time in my career when I was going to be afforded the opportunity to possibly, remain on a major league roster and rehab. Had this happened to me 4 years ago, we would have never been having this conversation about baseball. I would have been done, right? And
Yeah.
um, I think the opportunity cost of going down the wrong way of framing is just too high. I mean, we always have a choice, and that's something that I've really tried to work on. And like, you have a choice: either be mad, be upset, be sad, and focus on that and run with it, or be sad, feel your emotions, whatever people want to chalk it up to. How you're feeling. Okay, feel that, but then like you have a choice on how you want to frame it and move forward. So
Do you find yourself in a position where people who you looked up to when you were younger, whether it was teammates your age or people older than you, or even maybe your parents, are now coming to you for advice on how to reframe situations that you're in? Because I'd have to imagine that at some point over the last 5 to 10 years, you've passed people who you've previously viewed to be mentally more advanced than you.
Man, that's a hard question. That's a good question. Becoming an adult is a funny thing, and when I mean, you and I can't relate on this. I feel like you were so you were so far past me in maturing. But yeah, I think that I don't look at myself like people are coming to me, because I feel like adults, healthy adults, just go to each other for things that they're deficient in, or you know,
Well,
I've
you're a
had
healthy adult.
I
So
mean, I've had
you're the other end of each other for someone.
I've had players come to me who are struggling mentally at times, right? Like, how do you do this, or how do you do that? And I've gone to players all the same, and I don't know. Like, I taught my dad how to shoot an AR-15 the other day, but that's not, mental advancement capacity, or people who are older than me kind of thing. I don't know. That's a good question. I can't say I've seen a trend. People who are saying, hey, you've been able to go out and pitch in front of all these people. Like, how do you do that? I mean, I still don't know how to do it. I think it's just the marathon runner. Like, you have a pitch in front of you that you need to execute. You can either focus on that or focus on the mean guy from Boston yelling, nasty things at you.
So, as you think about your 30s, which you've now begun, do you even have a plan for the future? Or have you found that you're much more successful focusing on day to day, as long as you're pointed in the right direction, just figuring out how to make it to tomorrow?
I do think about it all the time, and Alex, I have no idea what I'll do after I'm done playing. I think that I'm so interested in so many things, it'll take a catalyst like, hey, your baseball career's over, for me to be like, okay, this is the direction we're moving in now. I'm very all in now. Like I said, I was very 1 foot in, 1 foot out when I was at Vanderbilt in regards to baseball, and maybe looking into other lines of business. And now that I have it, I don't want to watch it slip away. I love my job. Really, at the end of the day, for all the prices and sacrifices that you do pay to be a baseball player, I love it. And while I'm playing, yes, I do think about the future. I do prepare. Like, I'm not going out and buying a house I can't afford, or cars here and there. And I feel like I've been very wise with the money that I've been able to save. But I have too many things I'm interested in.
Well, maybe the next episode of Triple Sigma with Alex Feinberg, Penn Murfee #2, we can talk through some of the dabbling that you've done in coding or in playing the guitar, because you guys might not realize this listening to Penn. I'm sure you've picked up on the fact that he's very thoughtful, very articulate, very methodical, but he's also a polymath in terms of what he's able to do with his time off the field. And one reason why I wanted to bring him in front of you is so you can realize that a lot of times when you see people who are very successful in one avenue, they'll fall into a couple buckets. One, they're hyper specialized and they can't do anything else. In fact, their inabilities to do anything else actually feed into their abilities to succeed within one lane of their life. Many baseball players are like that. The other bucket is people who could be successful in almost anything because they have a good head on their shoulders. They have enduring mindset. They can persevere. They can adapt to a changing landscape. And Penn is very much the latter bucket. Even if he did end up getting unlucky and blowing out his UCL, his Tommy John ligament, before ever making his major league debut, there's no doubt in my mind he'd be doing something interesting in his life, because he has the capacity for reinvention and the capacity to reimagine his circumstances and reposition them in his mind to make a negative something positive. So Penn, thank you very much for joining us on our very first episode of Triple Sigma. For those who are interested in learning more about you or following you on social media, how can they learn more?
You know, I'm not as active on social media as I might have used to be. I did not use social media in a productive way for a while. But my Twitter and my Instagram is just my name, Penn Murphy, spelled Murfee. It's a little odd. But that would be my socials. As far as keeping up with me, I don't know. I've been in the woods a lot. You know, I've been trying to take advantage of deer hunting and fishing with my dad and my brother. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, I'll be on the Chicago White Sox this season, so go White Sox. And thank you for having me on, Alex. It's been fun, man. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I always love getting philosophical with you and, you know, continuing our friendship.
Yeah, appreciate it very much, Penn.